You're listening to Mastcast, an SM podcast where your hosts, Candice and Rachael, explore the complexities of living with a rare chronic disease through personal experience, patient guest stories, caregiver perspectives, insights from specialists, and updates from the research and advocacy communities, with the purpose of bringing knowledge, connection, and hope to those affected with mastocytosis and related conditions. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mastcast, an SM podcast. I am Candice, your co-host, here with...
Hi, I'm Rachael. I'm your other co-host.
Welcome back to another episode. This one is going to be essentially what our first episode was planned to be, an introduction to the podcast, what we hope to do, how we came together, and then our stories, a little bit of our stories.
Yeah, I'm excited to share with folks and learn more about you too, actually.
Yeah, this will be good. I'm really excited. So Rachael and I met virtually first, I think. You joined a support group. I know you probably don't remember this, but I do.
I probably
don't.
My memory's awful.
You joined a TMS support group, a virtual support group, because you were going to start your own. And so you just kind of wanted to see how it was run. And Pam has been doing it forever. And so you were kind of bopping in to see how things went and get some feedback and that sort of thing. And I remember you messaged me separately because we are of similar ages. And at least in the community kind of broadly, that's for SM specifically kind of rare to find folks middle-aged and younger.
Yep.
It tends to be older folks who are diagnosed because, I mean, for natural reasons, it's a slow-growing disease. It kind of doesn't pop up or really reach critical mass until later.
Well, and also for a lot of folks, the diagnosis time takes I remember back when I was diagnosed a while ago, it was like 19 years. It's significantly shorter now, but it can be
7 is the average.
Yeah,
now.
it's improved a lot.
19 years, good grief.
I know.
So yeah, I from basically the moment I was diagnosed, I really was like, okay, well, how do I get involved? Because advocacy is part of my education. It's part of what I've done professionally for a long time. And more recently, just before my diagnosis even, I remember having the conversation with my partner that while I like my job, it doesn't scratch that itch anymore. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing community work that matters to me. And then receiving the diagnosis was like, well, I guess I found my community work. And over the last couple of years, I have really leaned into advocacy. I've done speaking engagements. I've been really active online and on the support groups. And then podcast started covering SM more and more. These like very professional podcasts that were usually about half an hour. And I really realized that for me, I was missing the long form conversation because that's the kind of podcast I love most. And I just found myself going, this is all really great information, and I'm so glad these other people are doing it. And it's doctors and it's like, professional organizations putting them on. But it was missing something. And I really felt like it was missing centering a patient story too. And just the conversations that bring out the reality of living with a chronic cancer, a chronic disease. So I started working on that, and I started putting together a format for a podcast, and I reached out to only a couple of people to see if they'd even be interested in letting me interview them. And I reached out to Rachael, and I think the very next text you sent me was, do you need a co-host?
Sometimes you just have to shoot your shot. It kind of works out once in a while.
It totally worked out. It was, I laughed when I got it. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I really do need a co-host. For so many reasons, I think the dynamic's just better when it's two people talking. I think that you'll bring a much different perspective than I do. And I just think it's really helpful. And I like talking to you. So now I have an excuse to talk to you more regularly about our unfortunate favorite topic.
Yeah. Right. It's like I tell people it's the most fascinating disease that they've never heard of, and that I would love. I find it fascinating. I just wish it wasn't personally applicable. You know? So
yeah, right. Like you could just learn about it from the sidelines to be like, wow, bodies are weird, instead of my body's trying to kill me.
That would be lovely. Is that an option? Can I check a box somewhere?
Hey, CRISPR is really moving through rare diseases, so who knows? Maybe
Fingers
Maybe
crossed.
one day.
One day.
Someone actually just posted something on I don't know if it was a Facebook group or subreddit or whatever, about CRISPR being used for other genetic conditions. And of course, there's still a lot to be explored there, but I got to look more into that. It's an exciting possibility.
I feel like I had the same perspective on that I did about like the first like iPhone I got, which was like let everybody else work out the
Yeah,
bugs
yeah,
first,
yeah.
and then I'll buy one.
Same.
So we'll
Yes.
see what
Let other
happens, and
people,
then I'll opt in.
for sure. Let somebody else figure that out before me. No, I feel
Yeah.
that.
Once they've patched all the issues, then I'll consider it. You know.
Yep. Well, so before we get into talking about us, because I do want this episode to be focused on our stories
Mm-hmm.
and our challenges, and we've come up with some questions for each other, which I think is, well, it's the same set of questions, but for us to answer, because I think that'll keep us on track. Because I know that and I know that most folks who have complicated medical journeys can tend to ramble. So thank you for putting together some great streamlined questions for
My
us to focus on.
ADHD and it was a
Yeah.
team effort there. You know.
And I
I'm
think
not
you and
great at
I
staying on
are
topic.
Yeah, you and I are really bad at it too, because we're both like
Yes.
that. So we go down. I don't know that we ever actually like come to a conclusion of of like one topic of a conversation ever. So this will
Are you
be
supposed to? Is that how that's supposed to work?
it's not really fun that way, but whatever. So just before we get into that, I did want to say that the hopes that I have, and I think that you have, that you share,
Mm-hmm.
is that this podcast will be like informative as far as the disease specifically, research around the disease, but also living with it and also learning how to advocate for yourself, for others in the community with your doctors, all of that sort of thing. So we have a multi-pronged approach, or several areas of interest that we want to focus on, and episodes will rotate through that. Some of that will depend on who we can get in touch with and who we can get on and when we can schedule that. But I imagine that we'll come back to these one-on-ones every now and then too.
Yeah, I'm also like, in addition to what you said, like excited to
Mm.
talk about things like potentially talk about like upcoming research that's come out, and then be able to discuss it in a way that like not all of us have like a scientific background.
Right.
I've learned a lot since being diagnosed and like learned how to read a lot of this stuff, but not everyone has the time and energy or like previous education to support that. And so
Yeah.
like I think that that's a cool way to talk about it in like a real way. What does this mean kind of a thing, and to kind of just like talk about the things that I feel like as patients sometimes we want to hear or understand better, that sometimes like the translation between like the science and the researchers and the doctors, like there's sometimes a little bit of a gap there, and I think that that's
Oh, yeah.
a
I
cool thing that we can help
Yeah.
bridge.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that too we have some access there that we can
Mhm.
help yeah, we can help do that, is bring in the real conversations and the one-on-ones and dig in a little bit. I know I love getting into the granular parts of the science, but I'm not a scientist. So I need the opportunity to ask better questions and to get more clarity while still understanding scientifically what we're working with, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. No, I picked up a lot, but sometimes it's like, I end up trying to like I'm Googling like, can someone explain this topic to me like I'm 5? It's a
Seriously.
thing I've done a number of times, or like I'm Googling every other like word for definitions because I forget what
Mhm.
certain terminology means. And like the research is written in a way that's meant for other scientists and researchers to
Absolutely.
read it, not for patients to read it. And we're also the ones who really need that information the most a lot of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking about this in terms of we have AI that we can use, but it's not effective.
There's
It,
also a
it
lot of ethical and like
Sure.
there's a lot of mixed. I was recently having a conversation with some friends about like another AI related topic, and
Mhm.
there's such heavily mixed
Mhm.
feelings about it, the environmental consequences of it, the
Mhm.
ethics of how it's being used. So
No, I completely agree, but also want to recognize that it is being used and it is being like it's being forced on us, frankly, when it comes
yes.
to,
Mhm.
Google or whatever. But even in healthcare, it's being used and it's making huge strides also. So it's like there's obviously the environmental ethical concern. There's also it's kind of a juggernaut, or it's a Pandora's box that's been opened. But I guess really my point is like if people are going to use it, then we need to be really careful how we're using it and how much we're
Oh,
trusting
totally.
it. So that's why I feel like having the actual researchers who are reading these
Mhm.
studies, who are looking at them, they can break it down in a way that I think people depend too much on the AI to give them something when they're not the ones training it and teaching it and, like, vetting the information they're getting from it, you know?
And things can get lost in translation, and if you don't like, I
Mhm.
sometimes I don't know how to confirm if what I'm finding, the information I'm finding is, like, 100% accurate because I'm like, "Am I understanding this correctly?" But then there's no one to ask that to.
Yeah, totally.
Although I have been known to bring in research papers to doctors' offices and be like, "Hey, so since I'm here, can you explain this to me?" They don't love when you do that, but I
I
have usually talked a few into it.
Yeah. I literally have 4 tabs open on a browser right now of papers that I'm trying to understand about sclerotic lesions in bone because a lot of
Mhm.
TSM folks have osteoporosis. I don't. I have osteosclerosis. So it's still weakening my bone, but it's not decreasing the density of my bone. So I'm trying
Interesting.
to figure out how or if that might be related to my SM and how we can try to mitigate it because that's scary. I'm only 42. I'm not like looking to break a hip anytime soon. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
have osteopenia, so I'm on
Mhm.
the I guess, the more traditional side of things, but hoping it
Yeah,
could
all of
stay
us
there
are
and not advance, I'd like to not worry about breaking bones for quite some time and stick to only doing it when I do clumsy things, which is usually how I injure myself.
Yeah, I break bones pretty easy. So yeah, I won't sit here and go through the list of them. That's boring. But yeah, it's a concern that I have because if I happen to slip and fall, it's about a 50-50 whether I'm gonna break something. So
That's
I'm
rough.
it makes it challenging. I was very stupid to then go and try and play roller derby. And that led to not just a break, but a couple of surgeries on a wrist. So yeah, it's
I was
never easy.
recently telling my partners I want to try roller derby, and they both looked at me like, "Are you nuts?"
Don't do it. I mean, do it because it's so much fun. It's so awesome. But yeah.
I'm
It's
like, "If I can get everyone to be
problematic for sick
fragrance-free,
people.
maybe I'd give it a shot."
Oh, yeah, you're not gonna get fragrance free. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if anaphylaxis looks good on, like, the roller derby rink,
No,
so,
but
that
that's
aside.
yeah, that's not where it's at. So, okay, we've introduced the podcast, and we've already gone down, like, 3 separate conversations.
Y'all wanna learn more about us though, right? So here
Yeah,
we
this
are.
is it. This is it. Alright, so let's do the thing. Let's talk about us, our story, our
Yeah.
diagnosis, and yeah.
Okay, cool. So Candace, tell me a bit about yourself.
Alright, me. I am 42. I live, around Houston, Texas. Um what do you say about yourself? I work in, corporate relations for in a university setting, so basically I'm there to build relationships between companies and our faculty, our researchers, to help them grow their research opportunities, and connect with the companies that have the resources that they need or maybe want to get their research into, or maybe fund clinical trials or whatever that looks like. So that's what I do for work. And then I have like a bunch of cats and I have a partner and we have a little house and I garden and right now I am obsessing over the science behind laundry. So that changes regularly. My hyper focus is, depends on it just it rotates. So I also do fiber arts and this time of year I'm always into my knitting and crocheting and I'm about to teach myself how to Tunisian crochet.
Okay, then can you
Um
teach me? Because I actually haven't learned that yet, but I do knit and crochet.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I am excited to learn it. It all
It's
came
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? It all came down to a blanket I wanted to knit, but everything I was reading about the blanket was that it just wasn't cozy. Like, it looks really pretty, but it's just not, like, a nice blanket. I'm just like, "Well, then what's the point? That's a waste of my time and energy." So then I
And
found another
yarn.
one. Yeah, oh, yeah.
It's not cheap.
No, it's really not. Um, so then I found another pattern that looked not the same, but still had the vibe I was going for, and it was Tunisian crochet. So I was like, "Well, I guess this is my new thing." So that's me. What else about me? That's enough, right?
Yeah, that works. Yeah,
I
so
don't ever know how to answer that question.
I
Does
know, I
anybody?
get it. I'm the same. So what is your diagnosis? Tell me about that.
I am diagnosed with indolent systemic mastocytosis. That is my diagnosis. Previously, it was IBS and arthritis and whatever. I could enumerate, I'm sure, a dozen more things that people told me I probably had. GERD. Um,
You probably still do have GERD. That's,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, I do. Absolutely. I'm on a protocol right now
all the
trying
cool
to
kids do,
get it under control. Uh,
myself included.
well, why don't you tell me about you? Introduce yourself
Yeah.
and kind of about you.
All right. So I'm 37. I live in the Philly area. I have 2 dogs. I um, I also have 2 partners. I'm polyamorous. I am
Mm-hmm.
also queer. And I don't have like a formal day job at the moment. I have been on disability for a few years. I had a really bad flare up back in like 2017 that led me to apply for disability because I just wasn't really functional at that time, and things have improved a bit since then. But so I do a bunch of different things and kind of cobble them together as work. So I run community events in the area, in the Philly area, specifically queer community events. I also do some patient advocacy work, partially similarly the part of how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a lot. What else do I do? I'm also an artist. My background's in graphic design. That's what I did full time for many years. And now I do some graphic design and also do more like random art that I enjoy making, and sell paintings and handmade things and sometimes ceramics and you name it. I have probably done it or tried it. I love most, if not all, forms of art. Some I'm a little allergic to. Those are the ones I,
Mm,
don't do as often. Um,
sometimes.
I know, right? It's like I'm always bummed when that happens, when I've just become sensitive to some, like I'm like, "Wait, but I really liked oil paints. What happened?"
No, but that was
Um,
fun.
I know. Linoleum block printing was great until it wasn't.
For me, it was brewing beer, and I had a podcast about beer, and then I became anaphylactic to beers. I can relate.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
brutal.
that was rough.
I have some other similar irony type stories, but I'll wait. I'll hold off until it's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
relevant. And I think what else? I know I do other things. My hobbies. I'm into a lot of artistic things, both for work and just because I enjoy it. I've been pole dancing for like
Oh, fun.
almost 8 years. Yeah, it's a really good workout,
Yeah, I
and I
bet.
have a good arrangement with my studio about kind of managing my allergies.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
they're really thoughtful about it most of the time, and yeah, I think that's. Is there anything else I should be sharing that I totally forgot about?
I know, that's the thing, right? Who knows? We'll share it eventually, I promise. Like, at some
Yeah,
point, whatever, it'll come up.
I'm a talker and an oversharer, so
Same,
prepare
same.
yourselves, Stephanie.
That's why we're good podcasters.
I
That's
know.
why we're good for this. Yeah. You mentioned the advocacy work, and I know that I'm gonna spring this on you. We didn't really discuss it prior or anything, but I thought it would be good to just be open about where some of our advocacy work has been, or at least for
Yeah,
me.
that works.
So when I was first diagnosed, which we'll get in all that, and that's part of the story, but I was introduced to someone from the Blueprint team, Blueprint Medicines, who makes the targeted TKI, the tyrosine kinase inhibitor, the targeted medicine for the KIT mutation that most of us have that drives our SM. So I was introduced to them, and my story is weird, which we'll get into, and but I do still function. Mostly, like I have a job and I try to do most normal things as best I can. And so I joined them as a patient ambassador for a while. So I was doing that for a little bit. And really, I started to realize that that was pretty limiting for me. And I was looking to do more. And I wanted to step away from sort of the ties that bind when it comes to working with a pharmaceutical company, because there's a lot of things that they have to do legally and to
Mhm.
protect their consumer, to protect them, all of that. And it was starting to feel a little too confining for what I wanted to do. So I stepped away from that. And now I'm doing this and I'm, doing any other thing I can. But I just wanted to be clear that I have been and likely will at some future time worked with Blueprint. I've been paid by them to talk to other patients and all that. It's been a great partnership for me. I've really appreciated everything that they've done. I've never felt like I've had to say anything that isn't true or, like I've always just been able to be me. They've empowered me to really share my story and be out there, and they've opened a lot of doors for me. But I did want to disclose, I guess, that in past times and likely future times I've worked with them.
Yeah, no, same. You and I think we met in person for the first time earlier
We
this
did.
year at one of their meetings. But
Mhm.
I've been working with them. I think some of the team told me I was the first patient they worked with. So I'm
Mhm.
not great with time, but I'm fairly certain it was pre-COVID era. And I am a deeply skeptical person when it comes to large corporations
Sure,
and
sure.
pharma companies. And I remember like when I went over like the paperwork
Same.
that you have to sign to, because there's a lot of legality stuff around there.
Mhm.
I went back and forth like a dozen times with them, like
Yeah.
nitpicking everything and being like, I don't know, this seems like sure, you seem nice, but
That's
and,
so interesting.
I got to be honest, I have, and no one is paying me to say this. I benefit not at all from saying this out
Mhm.
loud, but like I have nothing but positive things to say about the entire team, and I've
Same.
told them that to their face. I was like aggressively skeptical, perhaps. And I love my favorite thing about working with them, besides like the cool opportunities and talking to, well, I guess one of my favorite things has been like the opportunities I've had to be in the same room as doctors and have my voice.
Mhm.
It really shifts the power dynamic
Yeah.
to have like the patient voices be on the same level, if not even more valued, because there were less of us than all of the medical professionals that were in the room. And it's like, one, it's incredibly empowering to be in that
Mhm.
situation. So I really, that's maybe my favorite thing. But my second favorite thing is like how much, like to echo what you said, they just encouraged me to be myself. Like they, I once had, they wanted me to go to like one of their meetings and they wanted to make it like a little video about my life. And I was expecting like one guy in a video camera to show up and it was like a whole team. I was wild. I'll have to tell that story another time. It was like
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fascinating and cool and happened to be on my birthday. So it was like a really strange way to spend my birthday.
For
It was like the
sure.
only day that worked for everybody. And, but they were like, they let me have multiple partners in the video because I wanted to show parts of my life and my dogs, which is like, I love
Yeah.
them. And also they were like, they were cool with me talking about all the different parts of my life. And
Yeah.
like, I tend to be a relatively like outspoken. I have strong political views. I have strong like
Mhm.
views about taking care of people and community and all those things. And they're just like encouraging. They've just strongly encouraged me to be as outspoken as I want to be, and been like
Mhm.
incredibly supportive about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
so
Same.
nothing but positive things. But yeah, we both have worked with them, and
Yeah.
obviously have enjoyed the experience. And everything that we're saying here is directly from like our own personal opinions, not anyone
Oh,
else.
yeah. They're
Yeah, just
not.
to be clear, I don't think
Yeah,
anybody
yeah,
thought
yeah,
differently,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
just figured I'd state it.
That's a whole other thing we'll eventually get into one of these days when I mean, we're, obviously open to partnership with other people, with nonprofits, but also with companies, and by partnership, I mean if they would like to sponsor a topic or something, but I'm not interested in anyone controlling what we say, how we say it. That's the whole point of doing this is pure freedom to share our experiences and um, to not have anyone auditing or censoring. Not censoring's not quite the right word, but
It's
I
a
can't.
form of
Anyway,
censorship, I think, like
yeah,
kind
like
of
what we have to say.
modifying what we're saying or limiting it
Totally.
in some way. And honestly, I'm not even great at that.
No,
Tend
I
to
say it
I
anyway. It gets me in
prefer to
trouble,
be
honestly.
outspoken. Yeah. Or to do weird things like text someone you barely know and ask like, "Hey, do you want to co-host for your
I'm
podcast
just
that you want to start?" So,
so glad you did.
me too.
So, what's your diagnosis?
My diagnosis is also indolent systemic mastocytosis. I was
What about
actually okay.
when you were diagnosed? No, no, go
Yeah,
ahead. You
yeah.
were gonna
So,
get there.
so I have been diagnosed for quite some time. I was diagnosed in 2009, so I was 21. I'm 37 now. Um, and I was like just about to start my senior year of college, and it was kind of like a really wild whirlwind to like going from complaining about these dots all over my skin to my mom, and being like, "Mom, my dots are angry," and then finding out that like, oh wow, this is like a serious disease that I now need to be aware of, and like also trying to navigate my senior year of college at the same time. It was
I
wild ride.
Yeah, and I don't imagine there was a lot of information out there at the time either.
Oh, no, there was not. I mean, there was starting to be more, but, like, the quote unquote expert and I have heard positive things about this I'm not gonna mention names, but this doctor
Mhm,
afterwards,
mhm.
but she was seen as, like, a specialist in uh, kind of my extended area. It was a bit of a hike, and I learned that she had, I think, one other patient who had it, and she gave me some inaccurate information that I think at some point was believed, which was that, like, there was a 30% chance of getting incurable cancer and dying, and which is not true
Right,
at
no.
all. There's no truth to that whatsoever. However, the information was, like, not well distributed at that point. That was known to be inaccurate at the time, but, like, not by it hadn't gotten disseminated to
Yeah.
everybody who worked with those patients at the time, and so, like, God, I mean, there was, like, a moment where, like, I thought about, like, quitting college and going and traveling the world and, like, doing all these things that I wanted to do because I thought I was like, "Oh my
Because you
god,
were
if
gonna
this is gonna
die.
happen, I
Yeah.
it's now or never. And
Yeah.
obviously it's not the case. So,
Well, I know when I Googled it, so no one called me or talked. We're gonna do the thing we do, and we're just gonna talk
it's
instead
gonna
of
happen.
following some
Yeah.
linear thing. So when I was diagnosed and I was told it was basically via my chart, and so I see
Wow.
this word or, systemic mastocytosis, and I look it up, and of course, at the time, I think it's maybe changed now because a lot of work's been put into it, but at the time, the first thing that shows up on Google is, like, life expectancy, 5 to 7 years. And so for several days until I could talk to the person who diagnosed me, I thought I was
Spiral.
imminently going to die. Yeah, that I
That's
have a very short period of
terrifying.
time, and it was so bizarre. Yeah, it's a really rough thing to take in, and I know I spend a lot of time now, especially in the Facebook groups are much more active, but on the subreddit, I've had a few folks that I've talked down because they just got the
Same.
diagnosis. They look it up. It's terrifying. And I have to not have to, but I go in and I try to, well, just compassion for the fear that creates and the uncertainty. But then okay, but I need you to take a deep breath and know these couple things first and that you're not going to die. And right now, it's fine. We're all going to die someday, but you're not going to die of this today or in the next 10 years. It's okay. Let's dial it back, and so just to stop the spiral because it's a terrifying place to be.
It is. And when were you diagnosed? Like, how old were you?
Yeah, I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago, so it was right before a couple months before my 40th birthday, so I was 39, and I guess we can both I'll share with you, and then I'll have you share with me sort of what that maybe looked like,
Hmm.
what the things were that were leading up to it, and I'm gonna do this as briefly as I can, but, I I probably my primary symptoms were, GI issues and pain, and I'd been experiencing joint pain my whole into my entire life, but it was always intermittent. And
Hmm.
then when I got to drinking age, I would notice it more maybe when I was drinking sometimes, not all the time, just sometimes. So I thought, whatever, it was just a high inflammation day or whatever, you just write things off. But after it was during the very post-COVID days, and we're starting to get out back into the world and I just thought I attributed my fatigue and my pain from inactivity and from post COVID malaise, just depression, like some low grade depression or something. But the GI issues started to get so severe that they were leaving me writhing on the floor. And then the joint pain became all day, every day. And so I started to bring up these issues to my doctor. And the fatigue, my God, it was so extreme. I was barely
Mm.
functioning and I had to do my job still, but I couldn't work a day, which my job is not strenuous, but I couldn't work all day, come home, and then go do things in the evening. I'd be out. That was it. I was done. Um, yeah, so that's when I started trying to figure things out. And I process to diagnosis is longer than that. Um, but she was testing me for lupus and she made a GI referral for me and she was testing me for rheumatoid arthritis and for all these other things that sort of cause some of these problems. And all credit to my GP. Never once did she question my symptoms. Did
Mm.
she write them off? Not for a second. She fully was just like, all right, this is what you're telling me is going on. Here's all the tests we're going to run. We're going to start figuring this out. And really went full bore. She was not the one who diagnosed me because so that happened, and I would say, from that point to, when I was actually diagnosed was probably it was less than a year, and I didn't have any skin symptoms, so I know a lot of folks they'll catch it from the spots, and I know you'll talk about that, but I didn't
Hmm.
have any of that. Although I did get angry hives when working out or getting too hot or something like that, but, yeah, in the middle of all of this my aunt had end stages of kidney failure and needed a kidney transplant to live. And we were working through all that. And my sister was going to donate and it just didn't work out. So that's when I said, okay, fine. Yes, I'll do it. And I knew I was having some health issues, but I was like, whatever, they'll get resolved. I'll be fine. People who are super old donate kidneys and live and it's okay. So I'll be okay. So I start going through the living kidney donor program and they do a ton of testing, obviously on your kidneys, very intensive testing of your kidneys. And then they do a CT scan of all your organs. And I had an enlarged spleen and severe osteosclerosis of my hips, which is like a hardening of the bone in my hips that is not at all normal for someone of my age and is more indicative of someone in advanced kidney failure who's been living with it for a long time. So, but my kidneys were in perfect functioning order. They had tested them thoroughly. So, yeah, it led to a bone marrow biopsy. And the nephrologist who is heading the donor program is the one who sent me my diagnosis via my chart.
Wow. I
So
didn't know
that's
that's how you got diagnosed.
no, I thought everybody
I
knew that.
no, I think I missed that somehow.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, who knows how long it would have taken otherwise? Because I just didn't have
I
the
feel
other
like the moral of the
indicators,
story is, like, you should be very generous and then,
Uh,
you'll get answers. I don't know. I mean,
I mean,
karma
ultimately, I
feel like there's
wasn't
some
able
karma at
to.
play there. I mean, well, yeah, and, for
Yeah.
those who don't know, people who have mastocytosis, it is advised that you do not donate blood or organs due to them not knowing yet whether, that could, like, pass
Mhm.
along mastocytosis.
Right. Yeah.
So
So, yeah, I was no longer a donor, and I can't give blood anymore. But I'm just like, "Yeah, but I was giving blood for years before." Um, yeah, what can you do? I don't know. Yeah,
bodies.
so that was when that's how old I was, that was kinda how it came about, and, like, there was like I said, there was preamble, I was clearly not well, I wasn't doing well, but I wasn't in anaphylaxis ever, I just had chronic allergies and stuff like that, but it was really the pain and the GI symptoms that really led me there, but I want you to share your journey too
Yeah.
because I do think that it's an often overlooked it's getting better, but those skin spots can show up and tell you so much really early and people just don't know. So yeah, could you?
Yeah, no, so I got lucky in a way that I had, so the skin spots are called either urticaria pigmentosa or and some people also refer to it as cutaneous mastocytosis. Um, what they are, or at least on my skin, they look, I think, different on different skin tones a little bit. Is for me, I'm very pale, so they look like kind of blurry freckles. I have freckles; these were slightly larger, and the edges to me seemed blurry. They have since faded from my meds. I try to show them off as when I explain this to people, and I'm like, well, crap, they're not even there anymore. And then I pull up old photos, and then when what I now know is happening is the mast cells are releasing all the chemicals that they store. But what I used to refer to it as is like I was like, my dots are angry.
Yeah.
And so they turn into like almost mosquito bite looking things when they were set off. And that would happen from things like if I was stressed, if I scratched my face or my arm. They tend to be, I had them primarily on my thighs, my upper arms, my chest, and then they started on my face. There were like a few other sporadic ones on my stomach and like here and there, like a couple of my hands, but like not, they still exist. They like when I, it doesn't happen as often as it used to with all the meds I'm on, but when they still get angry,
Mhm.
they still pop up in the same spots. They're just not visible in their neutral state or whatever.
Right.
And so I remember complaining to my mom about them. They'd show up when I took a hot shower. Um, I went to school in Manhattan. I'm sorry, in Brooklyn, and the radiators, the heat would go so intense in some of our
Mm.
classrooms that would set it off. And so I called my mom and because I was getting embarrassed that they were like on my face and stuff because people would ask me what was wrong with me, like, oh, is everything okay? You've got like dots all over your face, and I was like, oh. Um, and so I went to see a dermatologist actually about 3 years, 2 or 3 years before I got diagnosed. And I tried to explain to him, I was like 19, and I tried to explain to him that I thought he was biopsying a freckle. And like a lot of male doctors, he disregarded what I said and biopsied what he wanted. And it
Oh.
was, in fact, like not a mast cell. Um, and so I kind of just went on with my life. The dots got worse. I started having other symptoms. I used to joke that I was allergic to school, and in hindsight, there is actually likely truth to that. I was
Mm.
probably reacting to things in the building, the heat was really bothering me. Some of my other sensitivities didn't show up for a few more years, but I think that there were probably parts of it that bothered me, and just
Mhm.
not in the way that they, like, kind of landed later, and
Hindsight,
so
man.
yeah, right? I'm like, it's fascinating to, like, go back and I can put all these puzzle pieces together that I didn't
Yeah.
see at the time. Like, I knew something was up, but, like, they were also wildly bizarre and unrelated. There was a period of time in college where my ears would pop on and off, like, sometimes a couple of times a minute or, like, several times a minute, and it made it really hard for me to hear what people were saying, and also incredibly distracting, like, the sensation you get when you get off a plane, they'd pop,
Mhm.
and I've never really fully proved that that was part of my mastocytosis, but the medication that I take has stopped it, so
Fascinating. Yeah,
Likely
yeah,
it
yeah.
was, and I always believed it was. There's
That's
some
like
things
another rabbit hole. I could
I know
totally
there's some
tangent us.
things that, like, science just takes time for it to catch up to, like, I think
Yeah.
sometimes what we know as patients or what we suspect as patients. Um,
Well,
I
one thing
always
that I've
love when they
shared.
prove me right, though.
Oh, yeah, big time. I've shared in a couple of places, and I've heard other people have experienced something similar. So when I started the TKI, like, it took a while, but I feel like somewhere around the 6-month mark, I realized I don't have this literal, constant, never-ending, unyielding, underlying anxiety anymore. So I'm not always on the razor's edge of a panic attack anymore. It's like if something happens that is upsetting or stressful or whatever, I'm not tipping into freak out. I felt my body was just like in a much more stable place and it I had been reading a lot about the physiological nature of mast cell degranulation, which you're talking about when they release all those chemicals, right? Degranulation.
Mhm.
And one and in a few studies it says like anxiety is part of that. And I was really starting to realize that as all of my other symptoms were sort of lessening, they've never all of them haven't fully gone away, but as they were lessening, I wasn't feeling that anymore. And I did all my life, I felt like this is not normal. Like, I know people have anxiety disorders and all of that, but it's like I don't know how to explain it. It just never felt like sometimes it felt like, yes, I was anxious because I was anxious. And sure, maybe I do have an anxiety disorder, but I really feel like so much of it was mast cell reactions.
We could do several episodes on this topic. I have many,
I
many
know.
thoughts.
I know. So we don't have to go
No, I
I
have
just
tons
wanted
of
to
thoughts
share.
that, I know that I get off topic really easily. So I was just
I
gonna
know. Me
say that
too.
a couple years after I saw that first doctor, I my mom found a new dermatologist she really liked, and when I was on a visit home from college, I had an appointment scheduled with her, and I walked in, and I wanted to complain about the fact that the circles under my eyes are really dark, and they were hard to cover up with makeup, and I was
Mhm.
hoping she could solve that problem for me. People were always telling me how tired I looked.
Ugh.
Probably because in college I didn't sleep a lot. I mean, honestly, I've probably been tired since then. I don't even remember what it feels like to not be tired, and I
I
think
don't
some
either.
amount of that is mastocytosis and some of it is just, like, life.
Mhm.
But, I walked in and she was like, "So, those are genetic. I can't help you with those, but I think I know what these dots on your arms are. Can I biopsy one?"
And how many
Um,
years was this after the first biopsy?
2,
Okay.
2 years. So, um, I got biopsied. She biopsied one of my dots, I should say,
Mhm.
that's what I called them at the time, and then she also sent me to get blood work for something that I'd never heard of called tryptase.
Mhm.
And so then she got both results back and she called me and she's like, "So," and she started trying to remember, like, vaguely remember the conversation. It was quite a long time ago. It was like 15 years ago at this point. 16 actually. But she was like, "Okay, so we need you to find a hematologist oncologist, um, and you're gonna need a bone marrow biopsy because it had come back positive there were clusters." So it turned out these dots were actually clusters of mast cells under the surface of my skin that, like, in a little pile, changed the pigment a little bit.
Mhm.
And then my tryptase came back at, which is a thing I hadn't heard of previously before that point. It was like 42 or
Mhm.
something like that, and, normal is much lower than that. Um,
I think like
yeah.
8 is where they generally
Yeah,
want it
it's
to be,
like
right?
I think the I'd have to
8 to 12 or
don't quote
something.
us on this, but I think it like, the measurement's usually 11 or 12, but typically, like, I think people who don't have some kind of mast cell issue are under, like I think I heard in a conference recently that was, like, under 8.
Yeah, that's what I feel like
Don't quote me on that.
I think I heard that recently too, so yeah.
Okay, cool. So, luckily, and I guess luckily, my family has this blood clotting disorder that runs in the family.
Luckily.
So I have von Willebrand's disease. I'm pretty asymptomatic. My sister has had some issues with it, that were way more prominent, and then, I know, like, my grandmother had it.
I feel like my sister has that. I swear that's what she has as a diagnosis as well. Weird.
We should talk
Yeah.
more about this later. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
'Cause it's not that common. I mean, I know a few
No.
people who've had it, but actually, I say that. I just don't know a lot of people with it. I actually don't know how common it is. I just assume if I don't know people who have it, it must be uncommon.
Sure.
It's probably not a scientifically accurate thing to say. But, so I already had a hematologist at
Mhm.
Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and so I was able to get in even though I was, like, 21 because I was still in college, they still accepted me as a patient, and I was able to get a bone marrow biopsy there, and that confirmed that I had indolent systemic mastocytosis.
Were they testing for the KIT mutation then?
Yes, but they
They
had to do
were?
it via
Okay.
biopsy. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
couldn't they're now they
No
can test
peripheral blood.
they did not have that at the time. No, not that
Well,
if they did, it wasn't, like, widely used. No one ever suggested, I get that.
yeah, I mean, as far as I've read up on any of them, none of the peripheral blood tests are really very accurate. It's never shown up for me on a peripheral blood test, but it's in my bone marrow. It might on there's a new one, like, called the ultra sensitive or
I was like,
something
isn't
like
it,
that.
like, the super secret sensitive?
Yeah, yeah.
It sounded like something in, like, a spy movie, like
It
the
did.
super
It's
ultra
like the
secretive,
ultra
special,
sensitive.
ultra super duper
Yeah,
sorry, that's what it sounded when I heard the name of it, I was like, "That's cute. I like that.
I know, right?
It's charming."
I know, well, because I think the previous one had called itself something.
Super sensitive, and then
They had
we
to,
need
like,
to, like,
yes. Yeah,
ultra sensitive,
right.
new
So
and
they had to go up a
improved.
step.
I know,
But
right?
yeah,
And,
it's
like,
supposed to be
the
more effective.
supremely sensitive, I guess, is the next one. I don't know. I
Yeah.
have to think of some other adjectives.
Well, I think the way
Um,
that they tested it, I'm going to get the details of this wrong, and someone listening is gonna be real mad at me, but it was basically like, I think they had a sample of people who had been diagnosed with MCAS and had been tested, at least in peripheral blood for SM for the mutation and were negative, but then were tested again with the ultrasensitive and, I wanna say it was like 20%. I'm not trying to make up a number, I think that was somewhere around were SM positive. So, like, I
mhm.
think that this test will make it more accessible for people, and clearly it's catching more in the peripheral blood. I don't know what the incidence is for, like, compared to bone marrow. I think bone marrow is always the way to go, at least right now. But anyway, it is significantly more sensitive, and I think maybe it's also going to show us that SM is a much broader spectrum of disease and maybe more common than we think.
Yeah, I imagine an easier access to getting diagnosed would make
Yeah,
it much
yeah.
easier for most people. A bone marrow biopsy is, like, nothing to scoff at.
No,
Did
and
you
if
have a
you
bone
don't
marrow
have
biopsy, or were they
I
just able to
did.
do peripheral blood? Okay.
No, they did a bone marrow. So for when they saw the osteosclerosis, we went back and forth a bit. They were trying to figure out, well, maybe we'll just do a contrast CT or something like that, but they decided to go full bone marrow. And yeah, that's where it was found. Well, so we were talking about you were talking about your journey with, like, doctors. I know I'm going to say the word journey so many times it's going to get on my nerves. Um you were talking about your
We'll make a
experience
list
with
of
doctors.
synonyms for next
I know
episode.
I'm gonna have to. And that you had one that you had good access to one and you could go see a doctor and they
Mhm.
could at least try to get you on the road. So I was diagnosed by a nephrologist and he was not in my insurance plan because it was a separate thing, right? They cover the cost of the living donor thing, or my aunt's insurance covers the cost of it. So the nephrologist offered, he said, he said, I think that maybe you see a hematologist about this, but I don't know, but I think maybe that's a good place to start. So I can make a referral for you if you want. And I was in his network. And I was like, well, your network isn't covered by my insurance, so I'm gonna have to figure it out. And I really just very foolishly assumed that kind of any hematologist would see me, completely ignoring the fact that everybody has a subspecialty now. So nobody just sees anybody anymore. They specialize in some specific area of cancer. But I was trying to be proactive and I picked a bunch of practices that had multiple doctors in the practice who were in my insurance. And I live in the largest medical center or with access to the largest medical center in the country or in the world, maybe. We have an infinite number of doctors. But anyway, I called around to at least 6, possibly more, trying to, instead of just making a random appointment, since I didn't have a referral, find someone who knew something about it. Because I understood at least that it's very rare. And
Mhm.
I wanted to find someone who knew. So I tried to find, I could not. Everybody denied me. Everybody told me no. Like they wouldn't take me. The whole practice just would no, there's no doctor there that would see me. So it took me months to even find someone. I finally do. And he takes me on, and I won't mention names or anything because it's not worth it, but he at least knew of the disease and he knew that there was a new targeted treatment and that I met the criteria for it. But he didn't know anything else, like truly nothing else. He would ask me how I was doing, what my symptoms were. I'd tell him, and I'm not kidding you, every visit, he'd go, huh, weird. And then he would send me on my
I've
way.
gotten that too. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's just,
Just like,
but
"Huh."
he decided to diagnose the TKI or to prescribe the TKI. But he had done literally no blood work on me. I never even had my tryptase drawn. I was like, "No, I'm not taking something like this until you do I need to know what my platelets are," 'cause I had done all the research because that's what we have to do.
Yep.
We have to come in armed with all of the information we can gather because they just don't know. And grateful that he took me on, but I'm also frustrated that he did no work to make sure he really knew what he was dealing with, right? And at the time, this is all I knew to do was the hematologist, right? So that's
Mhm.
all I had. So eventually he did, because I told him multiple times, I will not take this medication until you do the tests. And then I listed out the things I wanted tested. Like I wanted a CBC, I wanted my tryptase drawn. He did one round of blood work that didn't include tryptase. And I was like, I'm still not going to take it until I need a baseline. I
Right.
need a baseline.
You, like, actually really do need a
I
baseline.
need one. And so I finally got it, and it was 152. And so
Wow.
it would have been nice to know
Overachiever.
that. Huh?
Said overachiever.
It's so ridiculous, honestly. I was just like, "Oh, that was not expected." I was thinking, 30, something like that, whatever. But I needed to know that so that if I'm gonna go on this medication, I have at least one marker other than just how I feel about whether or not it's working. And that's the only
Yeah.
one that I knew of other than another bone marrow that maybe measures the percentage of KIT mutation and compares. But I don't wanna ever do another bone marrow biopsy if I can help it. I'm sure I'll have to at some point, but
I recommend everyone goes to a children's hospital. I was put under for it, and I think it should be standard of care, but we could pick a whole episode of that one.
I tried. MD Anderson is where I go now. Thankfully, I have access, and I have a specialist there who's a researcher about SM. Like that's what he does. It's awesome. Um, but they wanted to do a bone marrow biopsy the first time, and I was like, "Y'all are gonna put me under, right?" And they were like, "No, no, our people are good." I was like, I don't.
I have a firm stance that I've only had the one, but I looked into clinical trials a couple years ago, and my first question was like, if I need bone marrow biopsies, will you agree to put me under? If not, I'm not interested. And I know, and
Yeah,
I'm like, knowing that like having a disease that is this rare, their options are limited. And I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
hoping that it would sway them. They need me more than I need them at that point.
yeah. Fair point. Yeah. My experience was terrible. I really hated it. And then I was in pain for at least a week afterwards. I know that there are lots. I don't want people to assume that's how it's going to be for everyone. I know so many people who it's a
It was a
breeze
piece of
for.
cake.
It's like no big
Yeah.
deal. My partner just had one. He said it wasn't fun. He didn't enjoy the experience, but he wasn't like limping and barely able to sit for a week. He was
Yeah.
fine. It's like almost the next day, it's like it never happened. So obviously, for some folks, it's a cakewalk, I think for most people. So I think that's why it's not standard to sedate people because
Yeah.
most folks, it's not a big deal.
I think it spans things. Like for me,
Mhm.
I appreciated being put under. I think I believe personally that like navigating the medical system and having health issues is largely inherently traumatic, and I don't think we need to add to that. Like there's enough that goes with it that I don't need to be in more pain.
And there's a lot of fear heading into something like that.
It just sounds scary, right? Like,
Anxiety and yeah.
but I will say that the recovery wasn't like for anybody listening, the recovery for me personally wasn't bad. I know people who've had different experiences, but like
Yeah.
for me, I remember like I definitely laid on the couch for like at least the rest of the day, and I think most of the following day. But I think like 2 days later, I was up and doing stuff again. Like I think I
Yeah.
was like a little achy for maybe 3 or 4 days, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like at that point. It felt more like a rough bruise than it did
Mhm.
like a source of like pain. Pain. It
I
also
think
has been
for
like a long time, so take that with a grain of
sure.
salt.
I think for me, because of the nature of my bones and how scarred the hips are, it was hard for them to get something in the first place because the bone is so calcified in places, and so I just think it added to the complexity of trying to get a decent sample, and
hmm
then the pain that I experienced afterwards. But I don't think that's the norm at all from what I read from other people. Obviously, people have had bad experiences, but my takeaway and what I try to remind people, even if I share the reality of it for me, was that it was very brief. And even the discomfort afterwards was short. And it got me my diagnosis. And now I know how to treat. Like, it's worth doing regardless. Like,
Yeah,
I firmly believe that. So,
they
and if I
were.
ever had to
Oh,
do it again, I would.
they were so afraid of. So there's all this guidance that has been largely adjusted since I had mine, about like what medications you can and cannot use. And so a lot of the ones they usually use to sedate people, um, they were there's better guidance now, but they were really concerned about using it at the time.
Hmm.
And so they decided that the safest option was to give me ketamine. Um, so, so
Sweet.
I my then boyfriend, now husband, he wasn't there, but my parents went with me because I was still like I was, you know, just I wasn't like barely an adult at that point. But
Mhm.
my dad took a photo of me, and I didn't know this until later. It's just a funny story, with my tongue hanging out, like completely unconscious. And so the next time I saw my partner, he had that as his phone background. And I was like,
Oh,
where did you get this photo? I didn't even know it had been
yikes.
taken. And then when I woke up, I had like, they had told me that I might have like really vivid dreams or something. And it was in September, and I'm a big fan of Halloween. And so I was having all
Uh,
these like fun Halloween dreams. And then I woke up and told the nurse how pretty she was maybe 45 times in a row. I may have proposed marriage. I can't believe it took me longer to figure out that I was queer, because I, like, literally tried to, like, marry this
marry
this
the
n
nurse.
I was like, "You're so pretty and so nice. Thank you for taking such good care of me." Uh, yeah, I get, like,
That's so funny.
extra
Yeah,
nice when I'm under the influence, apparently.
that's
Um,
hilarious.
but, yeah, so it was, I think I think a lot of people are afraid of it. So I just wanna, like, say, like, it's not I don't think it's anything anybody would, like, have for fun, but it's not necessarily, like, an
No,
awful
it's not a
experience for
horror
everybody.
show or anything. At most,
Um,
it's uncomfortable, you know?
I will say for folks who have uteruses or menstruate, having an IUD put in was worse than
Oh,
I was under, so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
my experience might be different than people who are awake for the entire thing.
Sure.
I was under for the bone marrow biopsy. I was awake for
Right,
the
right.
IUD insertion. But when I had one several years ago, uh, that definitely was more painful than any part of the recovery. Like I don't. A
Yeah,
lot of people have had that experience, so I figured that's a rough comparison.
yeah,
Um,
I think that's fair.
yeah.
I'm curious what your most like, so what then, before diagnosis or, like, around diagnosis, was your most challenging symptom, and has that changed over time? Do
So
you have
much.
Yeah, so I'm really curious what that process was and what it started out as and what it is now.
So I think the most interesting thing about this disease is that it is wildly different how people experience it. Like,
Mhm.
you know, um, I've met people whose symptoms or even the things that trigger those symptoms and set them off, um, we have the same disease and we don't have anything. There's not like a single parallel between
Mhm.
the two of us. And for other people, it's partial, like whatever. So for me, uh, and I think it's important to put that out. I see a lot of people posting on Facebook groups and stuff that talk about, like, if this person can't eat this food, what am I able to eat? And I'm like,
Yeah,
what they're able to eat likely
is
doesn't
not
have it. Sure, there is a possibility you may also be sensitive to the same things, but the odds of it are really not any higher than if you hadn't read that.
yeah.
Um,
You'll hear
like it,
heterogeneous. It's a heterogeneous
yes,
disease, and that's very true. It's completely individualized.
yeah, yeah, and that just means that like everybody experiences it very differently. So
Mhm.
far, like so much as like the thing that triggers my symptoms the most is fragrances, and I know plenty of people with mastocytosis who don't even have sensitivities to fragrances. They have food sensitivities or sensitivities to other things in the world that I'm not sensitive to. So it's wildly different. But anyway, all that to say, my symptoms have not really been very consistent over time.
Mhm.
They I there was a long period of time in my 20s where I was, like, accruing new things that were issues, and the old ones weren't, like, quite going away, but it kind of, like, would shift focus every once in a while. Um, the symptoms I had when I first got diagnosed were, like, largely, I grew up with really bad stomach like, issues. I learned that I was, like, lactose intolerant at, like, 8, and I couldn't figure out where, like, there were so many times I was sure I hadn't had dairy that I
Mhm.
still felt really sick to my stomach. This is one of those puzzle pieces that you put together later. I
Mhm.
flushed really badly frequently,
Mhm.
like, to the point where, like, sometimes it made, like,
Same.
funny shapes on my face. I
Mhm.
would
Same.
try to make a joke out of it, like, I'd be like, "Oh, it looks like an upside down mustache this time," or, like but there were times it looked like someone had hit me in the face, and people at work
Oh.
would be like, "Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right?" Or, like, I get it on my upper arms where, like there was one time I remember it was, like, a circle on my shoulder, like, a almost like a direct like, it looked like someone's fist had hit it or something, and I had to
Yeah.
explain to, like, every person who walked by, "Actually, everything is fine."
I am safe.
I mean, technically I have cancer, but everything is fine, and, so it's anyway, but, so flushing was, like, a very frequent daily thing multiple times a day, and it was so uncomfortable, like, my skin would
Mhm.
hurt from it.
Mhm.
So it was that, GI issues, really bad heartburn started in my, I think, like, late
Oh,
teens,
yeah.
and it's still something I struggle with a lot. I've taken quite a few Pepcid today, um,
Mhm.
just trying to manage it, and, that and, like, my dots being really kind of angry easily, and degranulating were probably the top ones. Um, I I also had, and I don't know that this is specifically related, it might, there's certain things that you just, like, don't know if it's associated or not.
Mhm.
Insomnia is another one that I've had my whole life, so there's that,
I know
and then
people experience waking up at, like, 3 AM with that what they call a histamine dump, whatever that is, where, like, you're hot, you're flushing. It's, like, basically hot flashes, except you're not in perimenopause or menopause.
see, and that's funny because, like, I haven't quite had, there've been times I've had, like, where I wake up at 3 in the morning coughing or, like, having other
Mhm.
symptoms. There have been
Yeah.
some of my worst allergic reactions have been in the middle of the night. Like, I'll wake up from a dead sleep and my stomach is a mess. I'm, like, sick for hours.
Yeah.
There's the times I am pretty certain I should have used an EpiPen and I was scared to. We can
Yeah.
talk about that another time.
Yeah, we're
Um,
definitely gonna talk about anaphylaxis and all
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to have someone on here because, like, some of the stuff I
Mhm.
read, I'm like, I would love a little more clarity, and I imagine if I
Yes.
want more clarity, somebody else does too. Um,
Absolutely.
and so all that, so that, and then over time, my sensitivities started growing. I did not in college have any sensitivities to fragrances. Ironically, my sensitivities became a thing when I was working for a Fortune 500 cosmetics company as as a designer in their corporate offices. They
Mm.
sold perfume, and my meetings were like, I was designing, like, shelving systems for big, like, cosmetic stores like Sephora. So my meetings would be in these stores. I cannot go in those buildings
Ugh,
anymore.
nightmare. Yeah.
I could not breathe, and it led to, I mean, I was there for several years as an employee, but I eventually led to me, like, needing to look for a new job because I was having so much trouble, like, functioning at work. And, so my symptoms shifting definitely changed what my I'm sorry, my trigger shifting definitely changed what my symptoms looked like, but they kind of, I started having more, like, I say, like, I'm, like, glitching sometimes, like, I get, like, random bone or joint or
Oh, yeah.
nerve pain
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes. That comes and goes.
Well, that's funny because I just texted you the other day, like, why do I have traveling pain in my body? Like, it would be, like, sharp pains in my hip, and then it would be in my ankle, and then it would be in my shoulder, and it would just, like a little imp playing on my nervous system, you know?
I genuinely thought until you texted me about it that that was, like, a weird me thing, and I never had mentioned it to anybody. I mean, I mentioned it to, like, my partner because they were,
Mhm.
w if they were sitting there when it was happening, but, like, uh, I just thought that was, I mean, not normal, but, like, my normal in a
Sure, sure,
way,
sure. Yeah.
and, yeah, no, and I'm like, "Oh, no, that's." I figured it was mast cell related, but I was like, "I haven't heard anybody else talk about this stuff."
That's a
And
whole
that
other
one
thing we're gonna have
comes
to
and
talk about
goes.
too is, like, what do we relate back to ISM and what do we like, I don't wanna miss other problems too, right? So,
'Cause
like
I have several. There's, like,
yeah, right.
I joke they're like Pokemon, you gotta catch them all. Like,
Yeah.
when you have one medical condition, you end up with, like, a dozen others.
I know.
Um, uh, I have my favorite terrible dad jokes that I make is someone will be like, if so, sometimes I'm like, "God, what the heck is wrong with me?" And then I'm like, "Oh, wait, I have a list, like a literal list of
Yeah,
things
I
that are
can
wrong with
actually
me."
just yeah.
And I have a dark sense of humor. Like, if I can't fix it, I'm gonna laugh about it.
Mhm.
So that's kinda how I
Got
deal with
to.
things. But,
So fragrance
so
became a really major one for you.
yes, it if you told, like, teenage me that fragrances were gonna ultimately dictate how I live my life, I wouldn't have believed you, and it is incredibly, it does, it runs my life in a lot of ways. I mean, I try not to let it, I do a ton of stuff that I think,
Mhm. Mitigates it.
I work hard to make it work because I'm a big extrovert who wants to, like, do things all the time. I have too much ADHD to sit still in my house.
Yeah.
I wanna, like, get out and live my life. I just have to constantly be, like, really creative about how I navigate things. Um, and, the other really big symptoms I've had, and honestly, if you were to pull up, like, a chart of all the symptoms we could have, I've experienced, I think, all of them at this
Most.
point.
Sure, yeah.
Um I started having asthma symptoms. I did not know until so until I started dating one of my partners, I did not know that I had asthma because no one had told
Mm.
me. I had an
Mhm.
inhaler, but, like, I just I only ever used that stuff, like, when I was exercising or something,
Yeah.
but there were times where I started, like, I'd wake up in the middle of the night coughing and I couldn't stop, and I just started using, like, Chloraseptic spray to, like, numb my throat to go back to
Oh,
bed
no.
until I started dating one of my partners, and they were like, "Rachel, go get your inhaler," and I was like, "Why? I can breathe. Why would I use my inhaler?" And they're like, "That's asthma.
That's
You have
asthma.
asthma." And I was like, I was like, "I mean, I think you're wrong, but, like, I'll give it a shot." And then I was like, "Oh, no, I
Okay.
stopped coughing." They were totally right. So they were onto something. I didn't know coughing was a symptom of asthma, in the way that it was presenting, but
That's interesting because 'cause I'll wake up at night sometimes coughing as well, just for no reason. I just assume, like, my throat's just dry. Maybe I was sleeping with my mouth open or something, and so now I'm coughing, but I'll have, like, a total fit. I can usually drink some water or something, and eventually it'll calm down, but funny.
mine sometimes wouldn't if I didn't. Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't like it ever escalated to a point. It has since then, since, like, now that I know what it is, there's been times where, like, I started coughing so hard I thought I was gonna, like, get sick because I was, like,
Yeah.
coughing like, the muscle contractions from coughing,
Right.
but it's never been like that I couldn't breathe, I just couldn't stop coughing.
Yeah.
The other symptoms that have been really, really impactful in my life, brain fog is the silliest name for the most impactful thing I've ever experienced in my whole life.
Mhm.
That started sometime in, like, my mid to late 20s, and for several years, it was debilitating. I had a bad flare-up as a reaction to a medication I was on, and it, like, really shifted how I was able to function. I joke that, like, around the time I turned 30, that it's like someone handed me a new brain and told me how to figure out how to use it, and it's been
Mhm.
kind of a learning curve ever since. My ADHD feels like it's different than it used to be. Other things in my brain don't feel like they work all the same way.
Mhm.
Um, it just my brain fog's a lot more manageable now, but it is something that people say colloquially and don't always realize how significant that can be.
Yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
can't wait to talk about that stuff more on another time, but, and also fatigue. Fatigue is a phew,
Mhm.
that is brutal, and also, like,
Mhm.
lesser symptoms too. What about you? What do your symptoms look like? Have they changed over time? I know you haven't been diagnosed quite as long.
Yeah. I feel like it same, basically, maybe minus the spots. Although interestingly, they've started to show up for me now,
Huh.
not severely, and I am on the TKI, but my specialist did mention that there is a small subset of patients, and, we're all weird in some way, and I guess this is one of the ways I am, who develop them or who, like they haven't become severe, and they're not reactionary unless I get really hot, but yeah. But yeah, it's one of those hindsight's 2020. I can look back and say I've had stomach issues my whole life. Mine are I know a lot of folks and this is just TMI, but it's just
Is
whatever.
it
This is a
TMI?
disease
This
we
is like
live with.
we're being honest, yeah.
This is yeah, this is a disease we live with. And it's a very common side effect is diarrhea, right? People experience that
Yep.
pretty badly, but I have the opposite. So I've had chronic constipation my whole life. And that's been a real struggle for me and and it contributes to all the other problems. So I've GERD has been an issue. I remember 20 years ago going to a doctor and saying, "I burp more than anyone. If I burped loudly every
Yeah.
time I have over the course of this podcast, it's obscene." And they are forceful and they are constant and they're not all acid producing. It's just gas, just like constant burping.
I get this thing my mom calls a pterodactyl. My one partner has 2 young kids, and they think
You're
it's
just
so
like,
cool
"Rah,
that I
rah,
have
rah, rah, rah."
no, they believe that there's a dinosaur inside of me.
Yeah. That's what I sound like
And
too.
and I'm like, "But it's your favorite dinosaur, so doesn't that make me extra cool?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, I tried to go to several doctors first, and I just
No, I was just written off. It
yeah,
was I mean, they didn't even take it what are you gonna do? I don't know what you even do about that.
I'm like a
But yeah,
sound
so
machine,
I
basically.
would yeah, me too. Yeah, my partner laughs at me all the time about it, and yeah,
Same.
sometimes he thinks it's funny, and sometimes he's like, what even was that? That's not natural." I'm like, "I know. I'm sorry."
Or do you ever do it in front of people who especially, like, right, when people, like, I started being social again when
Uh-huh.
toward the end of, like, the quarantine part of COVID,
Mhm.
um, and then I, like, forgot that these noises are, 1, not normal, and 2, that other people can hear me,
Right.
and suddenly the whole room, like, stares at me, and I was like, "I just did
Sorry.
that in front of everyone, didn't I?
I used to do it, like, in college
Whoops."
and stuff when I'd go out drinking and that sort of thing. Yeah, I would just burp, mostly just for the shock factor because I knew it was absurd, and especially coming from a woman, there's just that extra layer of, like, "What is wrong with you?" And I would do it for the shock value, but also because it felt good, and I was otherwise having to suppress them all the time, which was it gets frustrating after a while. It's just very anyway, so that was a big one, and constipation has always been one, still is really, but there it sort of progressed. Joint pain and bone pain, especially my hips and low back, are a big one. Flushing forever, like since I was in middle school, and it could be over something that's causing me anxiety, and some
Mhm.
people go rosy cheeked. No, 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 I go lobster red from like the from tits to forehead. Like, I don't know how else to
Yeah.
say that,
No,
but
it's
just like a
accurate.
lobster red. And then depending on whatever the stimuli is that's making me flush, that's when maybe like the spots on my legs might. See, the thing is, those spots to me were never always there. It's like you can't see them until they would react. And I'm now realizing, yeah, there is a distinct pattern.
Mhm.
They're all the same. They're in the same spot, but, heat was I was so intolerant to
Mm.
heat, and I
Yeah.
would always feel like my reaction seemed so ridiculous, and I would force myself to push through it. I would be flushing the whole time, but it would cause extreme brain fog and fatigue, so that once I stopped, like, I could sort of, for a long time, force myself to just work through it, work through it, work through it, and then the second I wouldn't stop because if I did, that meant I was done. Like, there was no recovering and getting back out there. Thankfully, I still have a massive heat and that sensitivity, and that's one of my biggest issues, especially living in the Gulf Coast area. But I have since taking the TKI, I recover faster. So if
Mhm.
I can realize I'm getting too hot and I can go cool down and relax, I don't slip into brain fog rest of the day, have to take a nap, still not feel better when I wake up kind of thing. I can just like cool off and recover and then continue about my day, which is like a huge win for me. But fatigue was a major one too. Like I said earlier on, I would get home in that COVID, post-COVID days, I would get home from work and I would just be done. There was no going anywhere, there was no socializing, none of that. I was starting to get to the point where every time I ate, I didn't know whether or not I was gonna have a severe reaction or not. That was repetitive. I didn't know whether or not I was gonna have a severe reaction, and I would go out to dinner and I remember especially kind of really coming up to it before I got the diagnosis, going out to dinner with some friends and having an attack in the middle of dinner and just having to leave, like, "Just get up and go. Sorry, I have to leave." And those attacks were pain, like, debilitating pain, and then they would just sorta take me out for a couple days. I mean, I've since realized that at least some of that was gallbladder related, not all of it, because removing my gallbladder did not remove the problem
Yeah.
entirely. There were also different types of stomach problems that I would experience. And I would say again, since the medication or since all of the medications, because God knows I'm on like a bunch and supplements and things, I finally am at a place where I don't I don't eat gluten anymore for the most part. I stay extremely low gluten and that helps a ton with the bloating because that was another one. Bloating. Oh my God.
Oh, I still get that
Constant
sometimes.
bloating. It just never
It's
went
been better.
away.
Do you have gastroparesis too?
I haven't been diagnosed, but
I got
I
diagnosed
have
like
slow
a year ago
motility.
or yeah, I got
So, there are times when nothing's moving there. No, I can there and I will have,
our bodies of
like,
joy.
I don't know if you ever have I'll have, like, these spasms in my intestines, essentially, and that's when I kinda know things are acting up because basically the peristalsis, that muscle contraction that moves food through your intestines, I can tell that's when it's not working, and then
Mm.
usually I have a medication that really helps with the muscle spasming anyway, and it reminds my body to, like, move the way it's supposed to. So I don't know if that counts as gastroparesis, but it does create slow motility. So
It also
it's
fits the theory that our bodies have absolutely 0 chill, like, they can't even relax enough to do what
no,
they're
no,
supposed to be doing.
no, they don't at all. I feel like I've gotta be forgetting some things, but I think those are and to your point about brain fog, truly, I don't think that is given its fair due. It is probably at this point my most debilitating. I can work through pain. I have a slew of medications I can take if I exposed myself to a fragrance that was not good, because I also have a fragrance sensitivity, not nearly as severe as yours, but, on Halloween night, and I had spent a fortune on a costume, and I was so excited. I was going to this party and
Mm,
everything. I was, like, so thrilled, and it knocked me out, but I was, like, hell-bent, and so I
yep.
just took rescue meds, and I used my nasal chrome spray, and I did all the things, and I just, like, relaxed for a little bit, and at about that 30-minute mark when medications start to kick in, I started to feel better. So it obviously was a mast cell reaction, and I was able to recover from it, which was great. But the brain fog leaves me incapable of functioning sometimes. Like, my speech
Literally,
will slow. I'm usually a very fast talker. I put ideas together really quickly. It's what I enjoy most. It, like, makes me feel alive. And on the days when
same.
I cannot form a sentence when I cannot find words, trying to put together one sentence and there's like 4 words I can't find in it, you know? It's
I say
awful.
I have said things backwards in ways like I'm not one of those people who can say the alphabet backwards.
Yeah, right.
I would
No,
have
me
to like
either.
literally have it written out in front of me um to pretend like I could do that, but I will say words backwards sometimes and it's like so clearly like wires have gotten crossed because
Yeah,
I can't do that normally. Like it's
right.
not like a skill like I've actually fallen into or something. I'm like what just came out of my mouth? And like at like the height of it, I mean, I have traveled internationally by myself and very much enjoyed it. And also when I have really bad brain fog or I'm having, like, a severe reaction that includes brain fog, there was one time, it was years ago, where, like, I was in a Target with one of my partners, and, like, he told me, he's like, "I'm going to this aisle," and I stood there, and I have issues with, like, some of the chemicals in stores. I mean, and
Mhm.
by some, I mean all of them.
Yeah.
And I suddenly, like, couldn't figure out how to get to where he was. I literally just stood there and waited for him to come back. Another time, I went to the grocery store. I had 3 items written on a Post-it on the back of my phone, but I would, like, look at the Post-it, and then I kept looking
And
up
then
at the
forget.
aisles. Well,
Yeah,
the thing is, like, I know this grocery store. This is where I normally go. Like, I know where most of
right.
the things are, but I couldn't remember where anything was,
Yeah.
and I couldn't remember what I was looking for. Like, I was literally, like, trying to hold my phone so that it was, like, in my view while looking at the signs because I couldn't remember. By the time I, like, looked up from my cell phone to look at a sign, I couldn't
Yeah.
remember what it was. I remember, like, that day, I was having a rough day. I left crying. I, like, gave up. I went home.
Yeah.
I was like
Yeah.
and there's times I can't drive, and that's become a big issue.
Mm.
It's been a lot better since I've been on a TKI,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't go to, like, friends' houses or parties unless I had someone to drive me home because
That's interesting. I
some
don't
of the
think about
medications
that.
impair my ability to drive, and we can talk about
Yeah.
that another time, but also, like, sometimes my brain fog is so severe that I don't feel like I can safely drive. There's only been a few
Yeah.
times where I was like, "I cannot drive a car right now," like, I could barely figure out what my name was. I mean, that's a little bit that's
Sure,
slightly
sure, sure.
exaggerated, but genuinely, I couldn't.
It's interesting that you say that because I don't think about that, but now that you say it, I mean, that's not something I would think about to, like, describe what brain fog feels like to me, but on my worst days, Denny knows that he has to drive, that I can't, that I'm not functioning. My motor functions are if I had to go to the grocery store, I would. If there was an emergency, I guess I'd figure it out, but, like, on those days, I just don't go anywhere, and
Yep.
I'm not necessarily putting it together like, "Oh, my brain fog's so bad I can't go anywhere," but that's 100% why I'm choosing not to get in the car and drive somewhere because I'm too exhausted and I can't think straight, and it doesn't feel safe to be in a car when my
Yep.
reaction times are so
Super
slow.
slowed. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I noticed it more because several times this happened where I was out and needed to get back to my house, like I was trying to leave work or I was trying to get home from an event that I was at or whatever.
Mhm.
Candace, I'm gonna spring something on you. I have a question for you.
Bring it.
So I'm looking at the time and how long we've been recording for, and I have so much more I wanna say on this topic, and I feel like
I
we could talk about this
know.
a lot.
I
How do
know.
you feel about it being a two-part episode?
I think that's great. I think that gives us a lot of time too to put together other
Well, because I think,
episodes.
like, this stuff is so important, and I think that there's
Yeah.
probably a lot in here that I hope that the folks listening can relate to. I think, like I don't know that I've ever had the opportunity to, like, listen to a conversation between 2 people who experience what I experience.
Yeah.
Even if our experiences are, like, different, there's still so much overlap. Like, you
Absolutely.
and I
Yeah,
don't
some
have the same
similarities.
triggers or the same symptoms for a lot of them, but,
Yeah.
like, it's so relatable. Like, I've had moments where I've had those symptoms, even if it's not, like, a consistent thing in my life
Sure.
or whatever. So,
No, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I do think we've covered a lot of what we had planned to ultimately, but I think that we can definitely dig into obviously this isn't like the end of what we've gone through, right? So we can
right.
definitely talk more about um how it's evolved over time. And I think we should get into like our coping mechanisms. And I think part of that is not just
Yeah.
our physical coping mechanisms, but our emotional and like
Support
spiritual, if that's a
systems.
thing. And yeah, so I think that's a great idea. I think this is a perfectly natural place to stop because it's gotten us through journey to diagnosis and what our main symptoms are and how we experience that. And I think it's great to, yeah, I love the idea. Thanks for springing it. I think it's
Yeah.
great.
I You want me to spring something else? I got another idea.
Do it.
All right.
Love
So
it.
so I was thinking, I don't know, are we open to questions from folks? You know, if somebody has questions
Absolutely.
about like something we've shared today and they want I'm not sure when we would record the second part, so it may be after this it
Yeah.
might be before this airs, but we could always do a follow-up one to answer some questions if folks have questions about, our experiences
I think
navigating
that's
this
a
stuff.
great idea. And I know that you and I have talked about this already, other ways that we can engage with people as we build an audience and start to grow like the number of stories that we're able to tell and everything. So I really want to, I want to let people know we do have a Patreon. I'm not interested in that. Y'all don't have to pay for content. That's not the point. Like, we're doing this because this is what we want to do. But we do have a Patreon. You can find us there at Mastcast. And you can join. We'll probably put free content up there. We're still figuring that out, but that's definitely a great place for future Q&As, AMAs, live streams with people and that sort of stuff. And these are ideas that we're bouncing around. So if anybody wants to and feels so inclined, please go to Patreon, join us. You can just follow us for now, but I think there's like a $5 tier there if you're interested. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would love to hear what people are most curious about and answer questions.
Yeah.
So we invite you to send us questions. You can send it through Instagram, Facebook, the email. You can contact us on our website. You can also find us on places other than Spotify now. We're on Apple, and then a lot of other streamers pull from Apple podcasts. So you can find us almost anywhere. And
We are everywhere now. That's what I got from that.
we are everywhere. And thanks. I hope that this is helpful for people. I hope they find it informative and relatable and validating and all of those things. And Rachel, thank you for doing this with me and for being willing to share your experiences. I think it's so important.
Thanks for letting me crash your idea. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be here with you and talk about it. And I look forward to chatting about this more.
All right. Till next
Thanks
time.
for listening, everybody. Appreciate you. All right.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Mastcast. Your hosts are not medical professionals, and nothing discussed here should be taken as medical advice. Please speak to your medical provider about any issues you're experiencing or therapies you're interested in. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at podhost@mastcastpod.com.